Welcome to the Luxury Listing Specialist Podcast with Michael LaFido, where top luxury agents reveal their best practices, plus interviews with real estate industry influencers, thought leaders, and luxury marketing experts. You'll come away from each episode with new strategies and tactics to dominate high-end homes in any market. And now for the latest episode of Luxury Listing Specialist. Here's your host, luxury real estate expert, coach, and trainer, Michael LaFido.
Welcome back. Another episode of Luxury Specialist. I'm your host, Michael LaFido. We're so excited to come to you this Friday, and we have an exciting guest today. And before I bring her on, just a reminder, if you guys have any questions, if you're watching a replay of this or you're driving and you're listening to the podcast, you can certainly send us an email. My email's on the screen right now. It's just simple, michael@marketingluxurygroup.com, michael@marketingluxurygroup.com. And we are so excited about our upcoming book. You can see it on the screen here, but Secret to Top Luxury Agents. We're getting closer. It's going to be an April release date. So we're so excited about that. So keep an eye out. You can go to secretsofTopLuxuryAgents.com to get on the wait list. And eventually you'll be able to listen to other interviews of top agents at secretsofTopLuxuryAgents.com. We do have a brand new ebook, which you can see coming across the screen now, but you can go to luxurylistingblueprint.com for that. It's titled 7 Secrets to Break into Luxury Real Estate with a $0 or with no marketing budget whatsoever. So go to luxurylistingblueprint.com. As always, reach out. We want to hear from you. If you have a success, if you have a difficult transaction or an objection that you'd love a different perspective, shoot us a note. If it's something that we think would benefit the listeners, we will bring you on our show firsthand so you and I can go through it and strategize on how to overcome that objection, or how you can leverage that big sale, or how you can land that big property. With that being said, as I've talked about before, I talk about getting involved. And so one of my big missions is to increase diversity in luxury real estate. And I'm a big believer that you should be involved, whether it be at your Chamber of Commerce with a networking group, whether it be your YPN, Young Professional Network, Women's Council of Realtors. And I'm a big affinity group supporter as well. So I am a member of NAREB. I've spoken at their national conference. I am a big believer in NAREP. I'm a big believer in LGBTQ Alliance, and I've spoken at many of their conferences as well. Well, today we're going to talk about another affinity group, and I will share with you on the screen what this affinity group is here. And then I'm going to also share with you my guest. I'm going to bring her on here in a minute. But today we're going to be talking to you about AREAA, or the Asian Real Estate Association for Real Estate Agents. There's over 1,800 members, 45 chapters, and it's a great organization. Their annual conference was just in Chicago, which I attended. And I was on a panel for leading real estate companies of the world with my guest that I'm going to be bringing on right now. And she was amazing. So I said, I have to have you on my podcast. So with that being said, I'm going to bring her on. Hope Atuel, you're out of California. You are executive director for AREAA. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate the invitation and the kind words. It's great to be talking about AREAA, but also about our community. You know, it's a little bit, hard to say, right? Because it's like AANHPI. It used to be Asian Americans, then it was Asian Americans and Pacific Islander. Now I believe that the actual label that's coming from the White House, and we get our cue from there, is AANHPI, which is the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community. Now, that's a little bit hard because it's like if you can say it in one breath. But thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes.
At your podcast.
Well, thank you. You know, you were amazing on the diversity panel that I moderated for leading AREAA, and I've learned, right? There's sometimes the teacher learns most. I was a former high school health and physical education teacher and
Oh,
a
wow.
football coach. And sometimes to prep for the lesson, you had to really dive in. Uh, so I learned from you when I was moderating the panel a few weeks back for leading real estate companies of the world. And, you talked a lot about the demographic changes throughout the country, right? And so we'll talk a lot today on a lot of different things. But first off, let's get into what is AREAA? How long has it been around? I'll put on the screen some statistics. But for our listeners that are driving or people watching, um, AREAA, you can find out more information, of course, by going to areaa.org. I'll put that on the screen as well, but areaa.org and org. And so I put that on the screen as well. But tell me a little bit about AREAA, how long your involvement has been, um, what is membership bring to the table for a real estate agent. Again, sometimes self-deprecating humor, but I know the answer to this. But I'm a straight white male Christian, and I'm a member of AREAA and NAREP and NAREB and the Alliance, and so obviously you don't have to be Asian to be part of AREAA. But tell us a little bit about AREAA and as well as some of the benefits to real estate agents that are listening, or team leaders or broker owners, on why they should consider joining a local chapter. You have 45 chapters, as you can see on the screen now. So they can go to, I'm sure, areaa.org to figure out, do they have a local chapter? Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
So they can learn more, hit that learn more button about becoming a member. And you have 18,000 plus members and growing. Your annual conference, I just attended. So it was end of 2023. It was November, I believe. Is that correct? Or was it October?
The tail end of October. Yeah.
Tail end of October. Yep. So where's that 2024's conference going to be? Has that been announced?
Yes, it is going to be in Las Vegas. We're going to be at Caesar's Palace this year.
Okay.
It's October 24th to 26th.
Awesome. So I have the website up. Those of you that are driving or listening to a replay, you just go to areaa.org for more information. But go ahead, Hope, and continue on. Tell us a little bit more about what a chapter looks like, what some benefits are. I always teach real estate agents the most listened to radio station that a consumer listens to. If you're on a listing appointment, those sellers listen to, or if you're at Starbucks meeting a buyer, is WIIFM. What's in it for me? What are you going to do to find me that off-market property as a buyer's agent, as a listing agent? What are you going to do to get me top dollar with the least amount of turbulence? So that's why I'm just kind of diving right in. First few minutes here, we have agents that might not know about AREAA. Why should they consider looking into and joining? What are the benefits as an agent or a team leader or maybe even a broker owner?
Yeah. Well, thank you for actually queuing that up. So AREAA, right? AREAA. We pronounce it AREAA, like the opera movement or like the hotel in Las Vegas. It is a membership organization. And we were founded in 2003. So it's been 21 years already. So fairly young compared to many realtor or many trade associations or membership associations. And, it's interesting because I tell folks, we're going to be 21 in Las Vegas, right? So we're legal. We can actually drink. But our organization was founded by a couple of gentlemen that's based out of San Francisco. Some of you might have actually had the privilege to meet them or work with them, John Wong and Alan Okamoto. And we're very blessed that they continue to be part of the organization, right? They're very, very active in a leadership capacity. And John and Alan both have been part of organized real estate for many, many years, whether it's their membership with the National Association of Realtors or the San Francisco Association of Realtors, or even, the California Association of Realtors. They have been part of organized real estate for many, many years. And I think they looked around in the early 2000s and said, okay, there is an organization really birthed by the civil rights movement, which is NAREB, the National Association for Real Estate Brokers. And, in like the late 90s, I want to say, NAREP was birthed, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. And so John and Alan said, there are a lot of very ethnic-based real estate organizations, whether it's the Chinese Real Estate Association that's predominantly in New York and San Francisco, or other organizations like the Filipino American Real Estate Professionals, again, very San Francisco, very Bay Area based. They said, let's form an organization. Or actually they thought, let's talk to NAR. Let's see if we can create a subgroup under the diversity committee at that point. And they gathered folks who they know within the National Association of Realtors who would have an interest in joining the subgroup. And what came out of that meeting was they said, actually, you know what? It's about time that we put together an organization, a membership organization that supports homeownership opportunities for the Asian American community, right? Because it's very unique. If you take a look at the multicultural groups, whether it's the LGBTQ Alliance or NAREP or NAREB, each community has its own set of challenges when it comes to homeownership, right? You take a look at the Black community, again, systemic racism, whether it's redlining and discrimination, they have their own sets of challenges. And then you take a look at our community, the AANHPI community, and we've got our own sets of challenges, whether it's credit invisible or even, kind of like the alien land laws, which are popping up in different states. Unfortunately, last year, right, Florida passed SB 264, which prohibits, but I'll get into that. But, kind of like these very, I want to say, subtle discrimination issues that are impacting our community that really I want to say started on the onset of COVID with Asian hate escalating, and now it has escalated into our community being able to live where we want to live. And I always say this is, shelter, right? Home, it's a basic human right. And so we should be able to live wherever we want. But that has been challenged. There is some shelter insecurity that's being challenged in our community right now. So that's really the kind of like the vision of John and Alan was, let's take a look at these challenges and try to work on these challenges so that at the end of the day, we are increasing homeownership for the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community, right? So if I could actually sum up the mission and the vision of the organization, it's fairly simple: to move the needle of homeownership for the AANHPI community. And that's why we look at the challenges that face our communities, because if we take away these challenges and take away these barriers for our community members to become homeowners, that's essentially then increasing the homeownership rate for our community. So that's what we do. It's 18,000 members and continuing to increase, which we're very, very grateful and blessed to be having this continued increase, not just in our membership, but also our chapters. You had mentioned that we have 45 chapters. So if you take a look at our chapter footprint, it very much mirrors the demographic of Asian Americans within the United States. So heavy on the coast, right? We are a very bi-coastal community. We're typically, in what you call gateway cities. So that's San Diego, where I'm from, San Diego, LA, San Francisco. You take a look at Seattle. And then on the opposite coast, you have New York, Boston, New Jersey, Washington, D.C. So, those are typically entry points for, Asian American immigrants into this country. And based on census data and based on data from Freddie Mac, interestingly enough, in the last decade, Asian Americans are actually migrating, right, from the coast, migrating into the middle of America. And I know we're going to talk about kind of like why join AREAA, or why even try to understand what's going on with the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community. 7% of the population, and it's projected by U.S. Census to double that number in 2040, in 16 years from now. So I do think that it's important to understand this community because, much to the stereotype of it's one size fits all, it's not. We are not a monolith. And there's great diversity within just looking at that AANHPI label. So I'll stop with that, Michael.
Yeah, no. So this is very good. So you referenced about 7% of the United States population falls under the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander, and it's going to be doubling in the next 16 years by 2040. You also referenced, which I think is great for our listeners, that typically, you saw entry points with a lot of demographics, but within the AANHPI category, West Coast, East Coast, but now you're seeing migration to the Midwest and rural areas. And, one of my goals and initiatives increase diversity in luxury real estate. And so one of my authors in our upcoming book, Secret to Top Luxury Agents, is Richard Silver. He's out of Toronto, Mississauga, Toronto area, Sotheby agent, top luxury guy, but he is also very astute and smart and realizes who his client is, right? Know your client. And he understands that Toronto is a melting pot, like a lot of major cities. And so he was very focused in growing a team that was diverse. And so for our listeners, and you're trying to figure out where you're at, whether you're in the middle of the Midwest and there's not a lot of people in your area it's not a diverse community, perhaps, don't go to where the ball is, go to where it's going. So Hope just talked about how diversity is increasing in the United States. And so that, from a business standpoint, it just makes good sense. The other aspect is home ownership. Stop hate. You're seeing a lot of these commercials at the Super Bowl and everything else. Stop hate. It's not just, black, crimes against blacks. It's not just crimes against Jewish people. It could be LGBTQ, could be Asian. Just stop hate, period, right? And so there is some barrier to home ownership in many of these affinity groups. So that is another one of their causes that Hope just shared. So do you want to talk to us a little bit about some of the barriers that, or statistics maybe on, you said during COVID, there was more hate towards Asians. Is it just?
Yeah. I can talk, kind of like maybe a little bit about the major barriers,
Please.
Right? When it comes to homeownership for our community. And I talked about where we typically are. We're very, bi-coastal. And because of that, we typically, the density of our population are typically in cities that are high price markets, right? So again, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York. And so if you take a look at average homes in these particular MSAs, they are very expensive. And so one of the barriers right now that we are finding within our community is really the affordability, right? Affordability of homes. And we already know that it's been a tight market thanks to lower interest rates. And even before, kind of like the crazy market in 2021 and 2022, we already know that inventory is very tight. And so, you layer that on with, kind of like the frenzy of buying in 2021 and 2022 and the escalating home values, which are great for current homeowners. But if you are trying to enter into homeownership, it becomes very difficult. And it seems like it's going to be elusive because homes are getting to be much more expensive. And I say that, the affordability issue is not just Asian Americans, but really all Americans in general. But what is particularly interesting within our communities, because we live in high price markets, right? And you take a look at median home price, San Diego. I would not have thought that a median home value for San Diego would ever reach $1 million. And it's like, what, $1 million? That's not even a luxury home. That is a median home value here in San Diego County. And so think of a family or an individual who is trying to buy a home, right? And trying to kind of like save up for a 20% down payment. 20% down payment is $200,000 if you're looking at a median home value here in San Diego. How many years could a family or an individual save up for a $200,000 down payment, and you're not even layering the closing costs? So it's becoming much harder, right? And then you're
replenishing all your cash flow, right? If you come up with the 200 grand, then the house, what if the furnace goes out? What if there's a big unexpected issue, right? Or if you want to make improvements. So you bring up a really good point. And so part of the reason we have this podcast and we have our guest on is to think a little bit differently, to be more empathetic to buyers, but also to be more understanding. So if you're sitting across the table from a seller and their barrier to entry wasn't what it was 20, 30, 40 years ago as it is in 2024. And so, but also for your buyer clientele, understanding, the nuances and real money, what it looks like. So, that's could be depressing. And, the American dream when 20, 30, 40 years ago was home ownership. And
yes,
I'm sure AREAA, I know NAREB, they talk about home ownership is so important because it helps create wealth because of appreciation. Home prices since 1980 on average have gone up a little over 4% appreciation on average. Well, 4% compounding over time. I mean, that's how you grow retirements and wealth. And if you don't have that, then you're making your landlord rich.
Yeah, absolutely. So the affordability issue is I think a little bit much more acute for the Asian American community just because of where we typically live. So that's a challenge, that's a barrier. And so we continue to talk about solutions for addressing the housing affordability, right? I think the National Association of Realtors have talked about a couple of years ago that we're about 5 million units short. That's a lot. I don't think builders can keep up with trying to give us more, build more inventory. 5 million short. And I'm sure that they haven't factored in functional obsolescence at this point. What about the homes that, again, deemed as functional obsolete at this point? But 5 million is a lot. So going back, right, to the challenge, the housing affordability challenge is a big thing. And, that's why last year, our president, Kurt Nishimura, our 2023 president had said, let's come up with like solutions now, right? Not solutions 10 years from now, solutions now. And here in California, ADUs have been, depending on kind of like what you feel about it, right? ADUs are pretty much one of the things that could solve the housing affordability crisis. But, I get it. Some people may feel that it's way too dense already. Why would you build, a casita or an ADU in your backyard and all of that stuff? But I think that's for another podcast.
So talk to me about ADU real quick for those listeners that might not be familiar with that terminology.
Yeah, so ADUs are accessory dwelling units, right? And so these are actual, smaller homes. ADUs, I think, technically and legally will have to be smaller in square footage than the main home. So if you've got some square footage or land right in your backyard that could actually fit in a small unit, whether it's 500 square footage of space, of living space, or I've seen some that are like 1,000 or 1,200, and it's detached, right? It's detached from the main house, and some in some areas we've heard this as the granny flat or an in-law flat.
Okay.
And it's again smaller than the main home, and the idea is that there is going to be this smaller dwelling unit that either a family member or you can rent it out if in some instances, or sometimes a caregiver, whether it's a nanny or caregiver for an elderly parent or what have you, and so that's I'm not in real estate.
Yeah.
That's the accessory dwelling
we don't
unit.
talk as much about tiny houses on
Yes.
Poultry Special. So thank you for clarifying that. And so you might have a multifamily situation where they're buying a house, maybe it's on acreage, they want family close to them. They build this little studio or smaller tiny house on the property, and that could help with some of these issues as well. So tell me a little bit about your role as executive director at AREAA. What is one of your responsibilities, and what are some initiatives of AREAA in 2024?
Yeah. So executive director really is I want to say beyond just managing the day-to-day operations of the organization, right? Because that's a big part of it, is making sure we have the lights on. We've got office space, managing the staff, which again is the day-to-day operations of the organization. Really, my role is to make sure we carry out the mission of the organization. Right. And whether we do it from a programmatic standpoint, meaning we have programs that support the mission of the organization, whether it's in policy, in membership, or building leaders. So we have more representation when it comes to leadership, not just within AREAA, but outside of AREAA. Or it is helping with our advocacy efforts, because that's really what will change from from kind of like a barrier standpoint, right? Is when we take a look at, let's say, current processes, current underwriting standards, current laws, current regulation that has an impact in homeownership for the AANHPI, that we could think those are barriers. If we don't change them, then it's going to continue to be a barrier and a challenge. And so a big part of what I do is to take a look at these policy issues and help identify how we could kind of like come up with a solution, right? So I'll give an example because I think that that's a little bit ambiguous. Is I think I talked a little bit earlier, or at least I alluded to this whole notion of credit invisible. So if you take a look at immigrants, probably here in this country, 10 years or less, they have what a lot of lenders will call, they have thin credit file. It's not that they have a bad credit score, but oftentimes they don't have enough credit score to be deemed credit worthy to be eligible for a mortgage. And the idea, particularly for a lot of Asian cultures, the idea of accumulating debt so that you could actually get more credit is very countercultural, right? It's like, you mean I need to be in debt so that I could get a credit? Well, that doesn't make any sense. Right. Don't I need to free up my cash so that I can actually? But so it's a lot of Asian Americans, a lot of Asian American immigrants, I should say, are very debt averse. So it's, the discipline of paying in cash actually is not helping them build credit.
Right.
And so one of the things that we have been advocating for, and we're very, very grateful that agencies like the CFPB and FHFA, the Federal Finance and Housing Agency, have made some now accommodations for underwriting, right? Looking at credit scores beyond your traditional FICO. So, for example, last year, FHFA has started what they call renter's credit. So, taking a look at an individual's rental credit history, which typically will not be part of your credit history because rent technically is not credit. It's not a debt, but your credit score gets dinged when you don't pay for your rent, because then it becomes a debt. But if you're consistent with your rent, it's not going to reflect your credit history.
Yeah.
And paying your rent is probably the biggest predictor of somebody's ability to pay their mortgage, right?
Yeah.
But,
it's the biggest. It's the biggest. Expense. Your monthly expense, consistent monthly expense.
It is. So it's great now that Freddie, I think, and Fannie are both incorporating this into their underwriting guidelines, is having renters credit. And which is great. Or taking a look at utility payments that are, again, typically not part of the trade. Utility payments are not a debt or they become a debt if you don't pay it. So it becomes part of your credit history. But taking a look at consistency of payment and looking at that as somebody's capacity to pay, or a substitute for somebody's credit history. So that's great, right? Because flexibility in underwriting is very much needed in multicultural communities, particularly within AANHPI. So that's a big part of what I do, is kind of like talking to agencies and lawmakers. I'm not a lobbyist. I was not trained to be a lobbyist, but in representing the organization, representing AREAA, representing our community. So again, these barriers can be removed or at least reduced when it comes to opportunities for homeownership.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. You did a great job of explaining that. And so culturally, because of their belief of being debt free, which is a great thing, it's hurt financially their credit history, which in turn hampers their opportunity for the American dream and home purchasing. So through advocating and education and associations like AREAA and people like HOPE, educating lawmakers to consider other avenues that this person is it has the ability to, purchase and make payments on time, etc. Although they don't have the traditional credit history that a lot of these lenders and banks are looking for. So some really good information there. Anything you want to add? I got on the screen. AREAA, we're coming up on time here. So informative. I recommend those that are listening, check it out. I'll put it back on the screen here. You go to AREAA.org, and literally you will start to see some great resources. You can find information about them. You do the drop down menu. I know you probably can't read, but their partners, the sponsors, membership, why join, benefits, find a member, A list, chapter location. So that membership button is probably where you're going to want to start. For many of you that aren't familiar with AREAA or you don't know where to go to AREAA.org and then hover over the membership button at the top, and that will be very helpful to you. Hope some really great information here. I do appreciate you being on with us today. Will I be seeing you at Leading RE's conference?
I will be there. Yes, I will be there, traveling next Sunday to be on the session both on Monday and on Tuesday. So looking forward to seeing you in person, Michael.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you as well. I appreciate what you're doing for the industry, AREAA, and for the dream of America homeownership and equality in housing. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Folks, if you got value from Hope, and she is such a great resource, please leave us a like, leave us a review. If you have a question for her, you're listening to this, you're watching the replay. As I showed it earlier, again, I'll throw it on the screen. My email is michael@marketingluxurygroup.com, michael@marketingluxurygroup.com. If you want more information on the Lux designation, you can go to luxurylistingspecialist.com. And we just got over 1,000 of our objection handling playing cards. If you're interested on how to overcome objections, go to luxuryspecialistgear.com. You'll see it on the bottom of your screen. You can get some swag, some t-shirts, some hoodies, and get yourself some objection handling playing cards under the accessories tab. Again, my name is Michael Lafito. Our goal is to help continue to raise the bar for the industry as a whole and help break down some barriers for buyers, for sellers, for real estate agents. Michael Lafito, until next time, you're listening to Luxury Specialist. As I like to leave it with, let's prove others wrong. Take care.